The valley air was thick with the smell of damp earth and pine. For 3 years, the rhythm of Silas's life had been measured in hoofbeats and the slow turn of the seasons. Then, the world beyond the mountains trembled. A star had fallen from its celestial throne. The voice in his head, cold and pragmatic, issued its command. Retrieve the asset. Deliver him to the designated recipient. Initiate the primary narrative sequence. He found the man by the rushing creek, half submerged in the icy water. Silas's breath hitched. He knew that face, even bruised and bleeding. The man's name was Elijah. Years ago, when Silas had been nothing but a starving wretch shivering in a derelict mission house, a stranger with kindness in his eyes had pressed 2 warm rolls into his frozen hands. A simple act that had pulled him back from the brink. With trembling hands, Silas carefully pulled the unconscious form onto the bank. The man's shirt was in tatters, revealing a lattice of angry welts and scars. The worst was a brutal, puckered line that ran the entire length of his back. A grotesque fissure where something foundational had been violently removed. Where is it? Silas thought, his fingers hovering over the ruined skin. The core? Excised, the system replied, its tone flat. Elijah possessed the highest combat potential in the narrative. Removal was necessary for containment. Also facilitates emotional conflict in later arcs. A shudder ran through Silas. His voice was barely a whisper. Did it hurt? A sigh echoed in his mind. They aren't fools. He was sedated. Unconsciousness negates sensation. Your queries are irrelevant. Deliver the package, receive your compensation, and I will conclude my operations. The story concludes. Elijah was tall, but he felt frighteningly light in Silas's arms, all sharp angles and fragile bones beneath the sodden fabric. The man's ribs pressed against him, a stark framework of neglect. A hot, helpless anger tightened Silas's throat. They spoke of grand passions and tragic love, yet they couldn't even bother to feed him. They had broken something beautiful and called it devotion. Perhaps sensing his distress, the system's tone shifted, almost conversational. The path to a happy ending is often paved with hardship. The final chapter indicates a harmonious resolution. All parties achieve fulfillment. Silas remembered the dog-eared novel the system had referenced. He'd read only a few pages before nausea forced him to stop, eventually using the book to steady a wobbly table leg. It was a tale of corruption, of a disciple using vile means to drag his luminous mentor into the muck. Halfway down the forest trail, the system sparked with alarm. You are deviating from the prescribed route. This is not the path to the designated location. Silas adjusted his grip, settling Elijah's weight more securely against his back. I'm not giving him to them. This is a breach of contract. Only a monster delivers a savior into hell, Silas thought firmly. Anyone with a shred of decency would do the same. Elijah awoke to the bitter, herbal scent of medicine simmering over a fire. Disoriented and blind, he tumbled from the narrow cot, his hands scrabbling across the rough plank floor. Hearing Silas enter, he flinched back, colliding with the edge of a table with a sharp gasp of pain. His voice was thin, strained with fear and weakness. Who sent you? Was it Julian? Or Marcus? Silas scratched his head, grappling for an explanation. His gaze fell on the old dairy cow, Bessie, tied up outside. He pushed the door open slightly, letting her low grunt fill the small cabin. Nobody sent me. I found you by the creek when I was letting Bessie drink. She almost stepped on you. Outside, Bessie snorted, turning her hindquarters towards the door in clear disapproval of the implication. The fall had reopened some of Elijah's wounds, fresh blood seeping through the bandages. Silas worked quietly, cleaning and rewrapping them. The man was so weak his questions trembled. Who are you? Silas. He'd asked the system repeatedly how to spell it before settling on the name. Felt solid, honest. The medicine on the stove smelled foul. Elijah clenched his jaw, resisting when Silas brought the cup to his lips. The fear of poison was a tangible thing in the room. "It's all right," Silas murmured. "You helped me once." A frown creased Elijah's brow. "When?" "Outside the old mission. 2 bread rolls. I wasn't a cattle hand then. Just someone with nothing. Recognition, or perhaps just weary acceptance, softened Elijah's expression. He allowed Silas to tip the bitter liquid into his mouth, his fine features contorting in a grimace. Silas turned to wash the cup, hiding a small, sad smile. Elijah was lying. He likely didn't remember. A man who shone that brightly probably saved countless wretches. It was enough that Silas remembered. Life in the one-room cabin gained a new rhythm. Tending the small plot, leading Bessie to pasture, and brewing Elijah's medicine. The man's inherent gentleness emerged as his strength slowly returned. His smiles, though directed at nothing, could lighten the gloom of the cabin. The only shadow was his injuries. Silas once caught a glimpse of a half-healed wound tearing open again, a web of crimson on pale skin. When he tried to look closer, Elijah shifted, blocking his view. "Don't trouble yourself. It will mend." But it wouldn't. Silas knew. People said those born with a celestial core were blessed, nearly impervious. But without it, they were worse off than ordinary folk. Their bodies remembered the trauma, replaying the pain in an endless loop. "I warned you," the system intoned. "His condition is not within your capacity to remedy. This endeavor is futile." "And then what?" Silas shot back, his thoughts sharp. "Force him onto a path he never chose?" The story was long, but it never spoke of Elijah. It only glorified Julian's obsessive pursuit, the immense effort to possess a treasured object, the most revered figure in their world, whose domain had once been endless skies, reduced to the confines of a gilded room. They called it a compelling romance. But if it was consensual, why the drugs, the theft, the mutilation? The system was silent for a beat. One cannot blame Julian entirely. The object of his affection existed on a plane too distant, too elevated. Then he should have striven to climb higher, Silas argued fiercely, careful not to let his tears fall into the medicine he was stirring. Not demanded the other be pulled down into the dirt with him. Don't blame your protagonist. Blame the mentor for showing mercy, for bringing an unwanted child into his home against all advice. Look what it nurtured. A viper. Elijah, having drunk his medicine, sensed his distress. "It's fine, Silas. I'll be stronger by winter." He couldn't see his own pallor, didn't know how unconvincing his lie was. Silas didn't challenge him, just helped him change the bandages. The town was abuzz when Silas went for supplies. Whispers clung to the general store like cobwebs. "Hear about the trouble back east?" "Sure did. Quite the scandal. One of their top people went missing. They're offering a fortune for his return. A king's ransom." Silas hurried home, his purchases held tight. The proof of the rumors met him on the path. Elijah, sightless, had attempted to light the stove. Soot smudged his cheek and his sleeves were charred. A wave of fond exasperation washed over Silas. He fetched water, gently cleaning the man's face and hands. Elijah had gained a little weight, but his fingers were still too thin, too cold when they briefly brushed Silas's palm. He coughed, a feeble attempt at nonchalance. "I meant to have supper started. You returned sooner than I expected. Did you get everything?" Silas paused. "We should move." "Move? Why?" He didn't mention the unfamiliar riders he'd seen at the edge of the property, or the whispers in town. He just began packing their meager belongings. "The grazing here is played out. Bessie needs fresh pasture." From outside came a disgruntled moo. Always the scapegoat. Their caravan heading north consisted of a fallen angel, a disgruntled cow, and a rusted hunting knife. Beyond several rugged passes, it was said, lived a reclusive physician of great skill. But the wanted posters arrived faster, plastered on every tree and post. Soon, Checkpoint guards at the mountain pass were comparing every traveler to a detailed sketch. Cornered in a dusty room, Silas faced his desperate idea. He held the bundle of fabric, his face burning. "I bought you some clothes." Elijah felt the soft, floral patterned dress. After a moment's consideration, his brow smoothed. "Thank you, Silas. It's very thoughtful." While Elijah changed, Silas paced the hallway, fanning his face with the wanted poster. The artist, presumably Julian, had done a poor job. The likeness lacked all of Elijah's quiet grace. He crumpled the paper and tossed it away. The door opened. Elijah stood there, the dress fitting him in an unexpected, ethereal way. The absence of his eyes was the only flaw. Silas fitted a wide-brimmed hat with a gauzy veil over his head. "It looks nice." The physician's compound was a fortress of tranquility, but the journey had taken its toll. By the time they arrived, Elijah was feverish, his wounds inflamed. The old doctor worked tirelessly, and when Elijah finally woke, clear-headed, some color had returned to his cheeks. On a particularly bright afternoon, he asked to walk outside. Silas's refusal died unspoken. He offered his arm. "The path is uneven. Let me help." It was a glorious season. Silas filled the air with chatter to combat the silence of Elijah's blindness. "In a few weeks, the apple trees will be heavy. The whole ridge will smell like cider. We'll come back then, pick a bushel." His gaze fell on the white bandage, and his words faltered. Elijah would see none of it. His companion, however, tilted his head, a soft smile playing on his lips. "I can smell the clover." "Thank you, Silas. Spring is a gift." Silas sought out the physician later. The man's voice was low, grave. "The physical injuries will heal. The eyes, the damage is not from any earthly blade. I cannot treat what I do not understand." "I understand," Silas said. A compassionate spirit shouldn't be condemned to eternal darkness. He had a plan. Bessie was left in the physician's care. The mountain air would be good for her. It was time to stop dragging her into his troubles. The system laughed, a harsh sound in his mind. "You think you can find a ghost iris? It grows on sheer cliffs, requires a specific ritual to harvest. You're deluding yourself. I've seen one before." The system's presence seemed to freeze. "You how? I never showed you." Then, understanding dawned, and its voice turned venomous. "I never should have intervened. Now you're going to ruin everything. So it's on Mount Kyler?" Silas adjusted Elijah's weight on his back, changing direction. "Thank you. I wasn't sure." Mount Kyler was a beast of stone and mist. Poisonous vapors clung to its slopes, disorienting and suffocating. Silas's lungs burned, his limbs growing heavy as old iron. The system's mockery was the last thing he heard before darkness took him. He awoke in a shallow cave, the world black beyond its mouth. Elijah sat beside him, his new dress torn, his face and arms a map of fresh scrapes and bruises. Hearing Silas stir, he offered a handful of wild berries with a smile. "I tested them. They're safe." The system was baffled. "Why does he protect you?" In the original parameters, he harbored only resentment for Julian and Marcus. It didn't understand the currency of kindness, the debt of a life saved. It couldn't fathom why Elijah would extend such care to a simple cattle hand. He has always been this way, Silas thought, accepting a berry. The sweetness burst on his tongue. To everyone, a beggar or a piece of scrap metal, it makes no difference. This was the true Elijah, his soul unshackled. At dawn, Silas carried him upward. The ghost iris danced in the wind near the summit, and beside it stood a man with a sword. Marcus, the story's other architect. After the cave, the system was full of questions. Marcus himself guards the iris. You have no chance now. Why do you still cling to him? Is it only the debt? It was more than debt. It was worth. Elijah deserved every good thing. A sharp blade of energy shot from Marcus's hand, slicing across Silas's shoulder. Marcus was colder, more calculating than Julian. He had been the first to devise the plan of theft and imprisonment. His strike aimed for Silas's forehead, stopping a hair's breadth from his eye. Marcus looked at him with pure disdain. "It's over," the system sighed. "Beg for mercy. Return him. It's your only option." Silas's knees buckled, hitting the rocky ground. He let loose a wail, tears and slick streaking his face. "Sir, please. My wife, she's awful sick. The doctor said I need twin blossoms. From up here on the mountain. Just one. She's dying." Marcus glanced at the common white flowers clustering near the rare iris. "You're not here for the ghost iris?" "The what?" "No, sir. Just the twin blossoms." Suspicion hardened Marcus's features. "That is truly your wife?" Silas wiped his face on his sleeve, then, heart hammering against his ribs, leaned over and pressed a quick, clumsy kiss to Elijah's veiled cheek. The taste of cosmetic powder was chalky on his lips. "Ain't my wife, who else would let me do that?" Marcus recoiled slightly. The Elijah he knew was untouchable, would have fought such a vulgar advance with every ounce of his being. This couldn't be him. Annoyed, he yanked two of the white flowers and thrust them at Silas. "Take them and go." They didn't stop until they reached a village in the mountain's shadow. Kind souls there offered them a tumble-down hunter's shack. Once they were settled, the system demanded, "What do you need twin blossoms for?" Silas didn't answer. He selected two blossoms that grew from a single stem. He ate one. The other he held before Elijah's bandaged eyes. They dissolved into a shimmering light that sank into Elijah's skin, leaving a faint, beautiful mark on his forehead. The ghost iris could restore sight, but the twin blossom could transfer it. The price was a life for a life. The system screamed, "You're insane. Your vessel is already fractured. You'll wind down and die." "Yes, but you were already dead." The memory surfaced, clearer now. The winter in Silver Creek had been brutal. 2 warm rolls hadn't been enough. He'd already slipped away in the mission house, body cold. The system, arriving late, had salvaged what it could, his fading consciousness, and housed it in the only available vessel. A discarded, mud-caked cavalry saber in a forgotten armory. A fitting home for a ghost. The other weapon spirits found him laughable. Smells of grave dirt, they'd whisper before drifting off. He'd languished in that dark corner for what felt like eons until Marcus, the prodigy, came seeking a challenge. He took 2 blades, a glorious, defiant broadsword, and Silas, who had been chirping an enthusiastic, misguided greeting when all others fell silent. Marcus kept the broadsword for its spirit. He kept Silas as a curio. When Silas failed to perform, Marcus shattered him with the broadsword, intending to discard the pieces. That was when Elijah intervened. He'd taken the fragments from Marcus's hand. A spirit bonds to its bearer. You should treat it with respect, even if it does not serve you. His touch had been warm, a balm to Silas's fractured existence. But it's useless, Marcus had scoffed, the picture of a dutiful pupil. And I have a true partner now. Keep it if you find it amusing, teacher. The spirit is oddly docile. Willing. Silas had screamed silently, pushing every shard toward that warmth. I am willing. Life with Elijah had been a quiet heaven. Plans were made to reforge him. Cups of enchanted tea were shared. Elijah's own weapon spirit was a gentle, reserved presence. Silas's pieces had begun to fuse, from fragments to larger sections, but never completing the whole before the system ripped him away, dropping him into the life of a cattle hand. The bond of the twin blossom was now active. As Elijah's eyes began to heal, drawing substance from Silas's own energy, Silas's world started to fog. He fumbled chores, bumped into furniture. Silas? Are you unwell? Elijah asked, concern etching his features. Just clumsy today, Silas lied, sweeping up broken crockery. You're fading, the system stated, its anger spent, replaced by a grim tally. Regret it now? Never. But he had to leave. Elijah was perceptive. He would notice. On the day of his departure, Silas cleaned the shack meticulously. He cooked a final pot of oatmeal. "Wait for me here. I'm gonna fetch Bessie from the doctor." His knees gave a sickening crunch as he stood. Elijah followed him to the door, pressing a smooth, warm stone into his hand. A river-polished piece of jasper. "It's all I have from my past. Sell it. Buy something sturdy for the cold. I'll be here when you return. We'll take Bessie to the high meadow." Silas curled his fingers around the stone. "All right." He walked a short distance, then circled back, placing the jasper and a sealed letter under Elijah's pillow. "Forgive me," the letter said. "The path is long. Travel safely." The men from the eastern sanctum arrived by dusk. Elijah refused to leave. He fumbled for a bowl, scooping cold oatmeal, insisting on waiting. Silas isn't back yet. They waited a full day and night. Finally, a senior disciple gently urged, "Master Elijah, perhaps we should return to the sanctum. We can leave a message. He will see it." "Very well," Elijah conceded, voice thick. Silas watched from the tree line until the last rider disappeared. Only then did he hobble inside. Every step was agony, as if his sinews were snapping one by one. On the table was a note, written in another's hand. "Silas, the sanctum came. I waited. I will return for you. Be safe." He folded the paper carefully, tucking it inside his shirt. He gathered the rusted knife from the corner. If Elijah's sight were restored, he would recognize it instantly. He was the docile spirit within. "Where are you going?" the system asked, resigned. "Trying to die somewhere picturesque? I have to go further. When he's healed, he'll come looking. He must not find me." His journey was short. The broken blade, drained of all animating force, collapsed on a roadside. A farmer took him in. 2 weeks later, the farmer mentioned the news. "Heard more of those eastern fellows are down in the valley. Looking for some cowherd, they say. Fella must have done a mighty good deed." A jolt went through Silas. His failing heart gave a stronger thump. "Happy now?" the system asked, its voice flat. He tried to smile, but it became a wet, wrenching cough. "What happened to Julian and Marcus?" A pause. Elijah reclaimed his core. Their foundations were shattered. Exiled. As he'd expected. Too merciful even then. "You're out of time." "I know." He cheated death for 3 extra years. It was a fair trade. Elijah found him soon after. His eyes were clear, his presence restored to its full luminous gravity. Silas turned his face away, ashamed of his own deterioration. Elijah saw the knife on the bedside table, and understanding dawned. With trembling hands, he produced 2 other fragments of the same blade from a satchel. The remaining pieces, kept polished and cared for all this time. He tried to fuse them, pouring his own vital energy into the shattered metal. It was like pouring water into a sieve. "Silas, your focal lens. Where is it?" Silas avoided the question. "Lost, maybe. Buried somewhere deep. I'll find it. Wait for me." Elijah stood, determination squaring his shoulders. "Elijah," Silas whispered to his retreating back. "The road is long. Walk slowly. Don't look back." When the autumn wind rattled the window, the last faint gleam within the metal flickered and died. The blade clattered to the floor, its final energy severing a single stalk of grass by the bed. The breeze took them both. Silas found himself floating, looking at the system, a translucent, shifting orb. It extended a shimmering appendage and bopped him softly on what would have been his head. Reckless, sentimental fool. It offered him a choice. A clean slate, a new life in a comfortable cradle. On the path toward that new beginning, it asked once more, the corruption on his eyes. Where did it truly go? Silas touched the space where his shoulder had been. The wound that had once channeled that vile energy was gone with his earthly form. Corruption couldn't be destroyed, only transferred. The recipient endured the pain 100-fold. It was a terrible bargain, which was why no one ever made it. The system's light pulsed, and in its synthetic tone, Silas heard something like grief. You never said a word. Would it have changed your directives? No. Then let's just keep walking. Rumors spread through the eastern sanctum. Master Elijah seemed possessed. He divided his time between solitary Mad Ion and relentless campaigns against the demonic incursions in the borderlands. His prowess, already legendary, became transcendent. Within decades, he ascended. His first act as a celestial being was to seek the Keeper of Destinies. He stood before the grand doors day after day. I have a debt to one who perished for me. I must find him. Eventually, worn down, the Keeper admitted him. Over tea, the ancient being consulted his vast charts. After a long while, he shook his head. The blade you describe, it could not have nurtured a native spirit. You are mistaken. I am not, Elijah said, his hand tightening on the porcelain. Then it was a foreign soul placed there. Then, please, Elijah's voice was steady but faintly desperate. Look for another. A man I met long ago, outside a mission in Silver Creek. I gave him bread. I need to know his fate. The Keeper, perplexed but obliging, looked again. That soul departed long ago. It has been reborn into a life of peace and plenty. Elijah thanked him and left. He had his answer. He knew where to find his Silas. The road was long, but he would walk it. And this time, he would not be looking back. He would be looking forward, toward a new meadow, under a kinder sun.